We're still not so much deep in the morning, and I hope you guys slept well last night, because if you're sleepy, listening to my talk would be the second worst thing you'd want to do. And you know what is the worst thing? Driving. How many of you ever struggle keeping your eyes open while driving? Or even convincing yourself that you're not too drowsy to pull over? Or even sat on the passenger seat, keep your eyes open on the driver, worrying if the driver's going to fall asleep? You know, they call it trust issues. I hope we have nobody here that's experienced a loss of a friend or family member due to a drowsiness detection, a drowsy driving either. So what I want to talk about now is about drowsiness detection. A great application of that is in driving, but it doesn't limit itself only to driving. It also has an enormous impact on workers' performances. It is commonly agreed that there are three main ways to detect drowsiness. One of them is human performance. A good example of that is in Mercedes-Benz cars. A technology called attention assist. It analyzes the braking pattern, the wind, road surface, or lane deviation, then suggests if you're drowsy or not. The problem is that not everyone can access that. It's only deployed in very high-end cars. Physiological measurements correspond to the fact that we can measure heart rate or EEG. Using EEG, you're analyzing the brain waves. You can suggest if someone's drowsy or not. Very accurate, but again, it's called intrusive. I don't think any of us wants to have something attached to us, especially in very long drives. The third option, human behavior, is the reason we're all together here. Technology of cameras. If we can deploy cameras in a good way, they're cheap and accessible to everyone. Using cameras to detect drowsiness, there are two main threads of work. One of them are the more modern ways that try to end-to-end use CNNs and get other forms of deep learning networks to extract temporal or spatial features and suggest how drowsy a person is. And a lot of work in the past few years have been focused on exactly tackling and analyzing the pre-known signs of drowsiness, like yawning, head movements, or blinking. But there's a question here. There is no denying that there is correlation between these four signs or other signs to drowsiness, but the question of how is remained to be answered. How is it really represented visually in someone's face, especially in earlier stages of drowsiness? Let's say a few minutes before an accident happens. That's very critical. If we can detect drowsiness there, we can prevent the whole thing in the first place. Nodding and just closing your eyes, that happens very at the end. There's then something. So if we know what are the signs of drowsiness, we can act them, right? And if we know how they represent themselves, we act them. But if we don't know how they're represented visually on someone's face, how are we supposed to act them out? I'm saying this because a lot of data sets that are public are focused on active drowsiness. There are a few subjects there that's been instructed to not drowsy. So in best case scenario, they can represent very deep stages of drowsiness and not the earlier signs of it. NTHU being a good example of that, and it's people emulating driving in lab environments. In contrast, Trophy data set is based on realistic drowsiness. People are really drowsy, but it suffers from two pitfalls. One is the number of subjects. It's only 14. And the second problem is each person has 3 videos, and those videos are not well distributed across different classes. They're supposed to be 3 classes, but sometimes you find a person having all their videos from the same category of drowsiness. So that's one of the reasons that it hasn't been really used much, drowsy data set. And the related work also focuses on, a lot of times on extreme, as I said, drowsiness, and using sometimes very intricate, complicated sensors to detect drowsiness. But the whole point of my work was to bring it to something like cell phones, so people can use it while driving, for example. Somewhat accessible to everyone. And we also came up with our data set, which is substantially larger than the existing ones, and is based on realistic data sets, realistic drowsiness. So what we did is we reached out to a couple hundred people, ended up with 60 of them, mostly consisting of volunteers, to participate in our work. We asked them to record 3 videos of themselves in 3 levels of drowsiness. The KSS table on the right represents, it's a very well-known scale, represents 3 zones of drowsiness. These are highlighted by ourselves. We made sure our subjects are convinced what each one means. We also gave them time. We said, for example, you have 2 weeks or 3 weeks to record the videos whenever you feel you're in any of these 3 states, because we wanted to make sure it's realistic. We couldn't keep people in a lab because we wanted a lot of people. So they sent back 3 10-minute videos, submitted them, we rewatched the videos, came up with follow-up questions if we were not convinced, and sometimes we asked them to retake the videos, and in most cases they agreed. The picture on the right is the setup that we suggested they follow. We wanted to make sure all 3 videos for each person follows the same relative, actually is consistent in terms of relative position of the face and the camera. And we asked them to use phone camera or their webcam, again, something that represents a normal camera that could be accessible for everyone. We ended up with 30 hours of video, 180 videos, each person 3 videos, which has extreme and slight drowsiness, and in all backgrounds, different resolutions, camera qualities, because each person used their own camera or webcam, and it's most importantly, it's realistic drowsiness. As you see, people from 20 to 15 years old also participated. There was one 59-year-old woman, staff member of the university. She was asleep. So this is very quickly, just very few seconds. This person, the first video down here is this person being alert. Same person, probably different day. Felt she's low vigilance based on the scale. This time was drowsy. Like the picture on top, the first row are people being alert, second row low vigilance, and the third row drowsy. I just wanted you guys to get a sense of how it looks like. Of course, an image cannot show exactly, represent each video has. So we have the data set, and each data set needs a baseline so people can build on top of that, because a lot of work in recent years, and even a decade ago, more than a decade ago, people start their own work and then try their own private data set. And there's really no way to say how good their work is, unfortunately. So it ended up people starting their own threads of work. So we wanted to make sure that we come up with data set passing our own standards, mentioned earlier, and a baseline message. So hopefully each person can build on top of that instead of starting from scratch. So each method needs features, and we use blink features. In order to use blink features, which I will explain later, we need to detect the blinks. In order to detect the blinks, there is a parameter called eye aspect ratio. The smaller the number, the more closed the eyes are. Using the facial landmarks, you can calculate this eye aspect ratio, and you see the signal when the eye is closed is dropped. So per frame, so each frame has an EAR value. You concatenate 13 frames. 6 frames to the right, 6 frames to the left of the center frame. The concatenated vectors have 13 numbers, a 13-dimensional vector, each representing a frame. So for each frame, you have a 13-dimensional feature. Then you use a simple SVM on top of that, and it says your eyes are closed or open. This suffers from the problem that a lot of times if you have quick consecutive blinks, it's considered one long blink, and that's not good in our case. So we use the post-processing called blink retrieval algorithm, which is based on heuristics mostly. It's more explained in details in the supplementary material of the paper, and how we separate those as consecutive blinks. So now we have the blinks. After we have the blink, we can pinpoint 3 major points: the start of the blink, end of the blink, and the bottom point of the blink. Using those, we define these 4 main features, which are intuitively make sense: the duration, amplitude, the eye opening velocity, and frequency of the blink. So each blink has 4 features. Now we have a video. Let's say we have K blinks. We normalize based on the alert blinks. Why do we need to do that? Each person blinks with different patterns. Some people blink faster than others. Some people open their eyes more. I mean, ethnicities maybe visually affect the way the features could be represented. So we used the first couple of minutes of link samples to normalize it. How it's done again is on the paper, nothing complicated. So we have the normalized blinks. We use T consecutive blinks to feed into a form of the full connectivity and a form of LSTM called hierarchical multi-scale LSTM. I will explain very briefly in the next slide what difference it has to normal LSTM and why we use it and what improvement it gave us. And at the end, the output is a continuous number between 0 to 10. This is important. Another thing that I found that our method makes our method different than the previous works is that we're doing it in classification, right, in 3 levels: alert, low vigilant, drowsy. But we're doing it through an intermediate regression stage. Why do we need to do that? I think we all agree when it comes to drowsiness, nothing quite happens discretely. It's like a natural transition from alertness to drowsiness. So why not model it that way? So the higher the number, 10 means drowsy and 0 alert. So we do regression. We also need something, a good loss function that can encapsulate this classification concept into our regression problem. It turns out that this hinge loss function can be a very good sample because it only penalizes the outputs that are further than a certain threshold, a parameter or delta, than the true label. And as you see here, once we have our output, regressed output, we, based on the intervals, we classify it in our, into our 3 intervals of alertness. So the hierarchical multi-scale STM, of course it's not my work, it's being used in natural language processing before. And what interested me is that the fact that it's like normal LSTM with some additional connections. It can capture more high coarse grain and fine grain information. So for example, if you give it a sequence of character with no spaces, it can realize where each word starts, where each word ends, or where each phrase starts, where each frame ends. So if you can look at blinks as this character, maybe the way we blink is a way of talking. So let's just give it a sequence of blink and let the network realize how those blinks, how many of those blinks can affect our drowsiness level. So we have our baseline, now we have our method, we need a good metric for that. So we do regression, as I said, then we discretize the output based on those intervals. We do voting too, because each T consecutive blinks, T in our case was 30, these 30 blinks is called a blink segment in our paper. And over the course of the video, you have different blink segments. You can't expect every blink segment necessarily to represent, let's say, drowsy if you're drowsy. So what you need to do is the predominant state of the whole video, then you need to do voting. So you do voting, and the majority, of course, wins. At the end, that's evaluated by the video accuracy metric. At different parts of the pipeline, we set different accuracy measurements. The regression errors only capture the fact that how much we're off from the borderline of our interval. For example, if you're drowsy, anything over 6.6 is categorized as drowsy. So if the output is 5, it makes a difference or compared to the case that your output is 2. So that's what this one captures, the regression errors captures. Blinks are, of course, before kind of pooling that we have, whether it's voting or average pooling. So we also did the experiments. This table specifically has 2 important pieces of information. The first one is the boost that we get using hierarchical multi-scale LSTM versus normal LSTM, as you see. Our accuracy increases and the regression errors decrease. But the more important piece of information is that we realize that there is temporal information in how we blink. So I said, okay, let's not make it let's not just for the sake of complication use LSTM or any form of LSTM, let's just give it to full connect layer to see how it works. So I fed it to full connect layers, and we saw that the output is much worse than in the case that we gave it to form of RNN, which means that there is temporal information in how we blink, and that correlates with how we feel in terms of drowsiness. We also asked 20 people to watch the whole videos from different disciplines and write down a number between 0 to 10. same as a scale, representing how much they feel each person is in the video. We want to see how humans can detect. So I claim it's realistic drowsiness. So let's see how humans can detect drowsiness. It turns out that overall our method can work better than the human judgment, and it turns out to be a harder job for humans. Because again, when it comes to slight drowsiness, you can try it. If you see someone, just ask them to see how good you're at your detection. If you find someone drowsy, or you think they're drowsy. So the confusion matrix gives us more information. When it comes to low vigilance, still humans work better than the method, which are admittedly the harder case. But the alert and drowsy cases are categorized better and classified better in our baseline method. We also redefine the problem into a binary classification problem of drowsy versus alert. And you can see the red small cross is the human judgment in the curve, like down below the curve. And in that case, we categorize low vigilance and drowsy as drowsy and alert as alert for humans. And for different thresholds, we do our OC curve and see that the method even binary classification performs better. So transportation has a very major role in our day-to-day lifestyles, and it does not care if you're a newborn child or an elderly citizen, if you have a PhD or you can't even read. It empowers us, and sometimes it can endanger us. It connects us more than ever. So every little contribution can have an enormous impact on saving a life or bringing a smile. We hope that this work can be that little contribution. Thank you.
Questions? So first, to make sure I understand how you collected the ground truth. So what was the source of the sort of that main metric? How was that the same person who recorded the video? Just marking that up, like I'm drowsy, I'm non-drowsy.
The person, like let's say if you're a subject, I told you you have 20 days, just go through your life, then record these 3 videos whenever you feel as the subject you're in any of those 3 states. So you subjectively decide if you're in any of those 3 cases. I can't measure it for you. Like you were the best who can feel that you're in that case.
Yeah, and now a suggestion. So maybe it makes sense to consider using for the ground truth like this labels, drowsy, non-drowsy, alert, maybe the medical information for the subject, like blood pressure, whatever, heartbeat rate, and all of that stuff.
The problem was that we wanted 60 people to do that. Even doing this thing, it took a toll on us to make sure people follow that. If you wanted to give them some equipment, first of all, we need a lot of equipment. We need to make sure they follow that. It's not really that practical, especially if you're talking about this 60 people that have no affiliation with you, and a lot of them are volunteers. So it's easier said than done unless you have them in a lab environment. And you have to keep them for many hours to make sure they go all 3 hours. And we're talking about 60 people here. So that makes it a bit tricky. I understand if that can be done, that improves the fact. The subjectiveness is a problem here. I'm not going to deny that. It's a problem, but that's the best solution we could find at the time.
Okay.
More question? I have actually a question. So, my first question was about the ground truth, which you answered. The second one is about that different between the appearance of the drowsiness between ethnicity. Did you notice? Because it is that our facial expression even during the everyday life is different between people.
Yeah.
So did you see the differences, or how much heterogeneity in races you have in the data set?
There is no denying that just using blinks is not enough. I mean, because we use blinks. So if you're not using other pieces of information in someone's face, which can be used. And the reason we use blinks is because that was a target that you know has a relation with drowsiness. So that's first of all why we use blinks. So I'm not saying using blinks can give the best accuracy. We did not analyze separately for how it affects how racial people's races or ethnicities can affect. But if it can affect, of course, it goes back to more of the detection problem, the eye-blink detection problem, which makes it, of course, harder if you're smaller eyes, but we do not quantitatively analyze that.
No, I'm actually thinking about the way that is the behavior part. It's maybe the number of blinking between genders, races, and ages.
Right.
changes? Were you looking at it at the literature, more medical side, to see that if the distribution is uniform or there are differences?
As far as I can remember, I don't remember like any piece of information referring to that, but my information might not be